What's going on, everybody? Dev Demolino here, the synthesizer of opinions, back today with another think piece, another list. It is the end of August. 8 months have passed. I want to talk about what my favorite and what my least favorite albums of the year have been. And what is a list without its honorable mentions? I have to kick a few, and Race Remord is at the very top of that list. Race Remord dropped off their third album this year, the third installment in their SREM Life series. Though this album was titled SREM 3 or SR 3M. Generally, I like the SREM Life series, and I like Race Remord as a group. This album does not necessarily differ from that pattern. However, this album is not the only album they released. This was just one album in a triple disc. The other two albums are bad. They're very bad. And even the SREM Life album is not great, but it does have its slaps. It's very much rotatable. I've listened to it a lot this year, and I just wanted to give it that quick bit of praise. The next album, definitely worth talking about, S.O.B., RBE, North Vallejo, The Bay, Worldwide. These guys dropped off their sophomore album, Gangin', and while it's not perfect, I wouldn't call it a great album. I wouldn't say it's my favorite album of the year. It is still coming from one of the most exciting groups in hip-hop, in my opinion. I am a lover of West Coast music. I'm a lover of Bay Area music, and these guys are really pushing the genre forward. Last album in the honorable mention section is actually kind of a disappointment. I'm a little sad to put it here, but Punkin' by Maxo Cream. If you remember in the beginning of the year, I gave this a very favorable review. I really enjoyed it at the time, but Punkin' has just not stuck with me over time, and I think that is a good metric to base your ultimate opinion of an album on. Now, let's really quickly burn through some of the worst or most disappointing albums of the year by my metrics. I personally don't really like to talk about bad music all that often. There's so much good music coming out on a week-to-week basis, I'd much rather just spend my time focusing on that. But every year, there are some bad albums that come out, and they need to be acknowledged as such. So, a couple that are just off the top of my head. Let's start with Total Xanarchy by Lil Xan. You know, I had this thought yesterday that Lil Xan might be straight up one of the worst rappers of all time. Now, 35, 40 years from now, when you're telling your grandchildren about the great historic war between the old heads and the new SoundCloud mumble rap generation, you're gonna realize that the old heads had a lot of ammunition in Lil Xan. And this album is really going to resonate as one of the true pieces of trash. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. Next album, this one's gonna sting, no pun intended. Scorpion by Drake is a bad album. If you like listening to albums, if you enjoy an album experience, Scorpion is a complete waste of everyone's time. And it reeks of just being a total cash grab of an album that plays way too strongly to its demographics. I have absolutely no reason to sink another 90 minutes into this album. I'll never fucking do it again. And let's keep it in the family here for a moment, because Queen by Nicki Minaj was also very bad album. Didn't like it. Not at all. It sucked. Now, if you haven't yet, I just reviewed this album, so I'll link it at the end of the video, but go watch my review about this album, because I have some scathing things to say. It's worth checking out, and there's a fun little story about me nestled into the video as well. Now, this next album is going to hurt me a lot more than it's going to hurt you. Beware the Book of Eli by Ski Mask the Slump God is squandered potential personified in an album. Man, this thing sucks. The album sucks, and I hate that it sucks. All this hype building up to this project and for it to be kind of trash. I am hopeful for the next album still. Ski Mask is still an interesting and exciting artist to me, but this ain't it, Chief. This ain't it at all. All right, so those are the bad albums in my opinion. I'm sure there are plenty more, but these are the ones that really broke my heart. Let's move on to better albums. Best albums of the year, potentially, may end up on my end of the year list at the end of the year. And we could start this segment off with a pair of EPs that got 2018 off to a lovely beginning. The Crush EP by Raven Lenae and the Royalty EP by Dreamville's Earth Gang are currently standing as two of my favorite projects to come out in the year period. I've been very aware of both of these acts prior to the release of these projects, but these projects are going to be the projects that have really sold me on these artists. The appetizers, if you will, for whatever main course comes next at the end of this year or in next year, probably a full-length LP or a mixtape. They both certainly have an excellent chance of being mentioned at the end of the year in my list. Next, we're talking a soundtrack, Black Panther, the album, Kendrick Lamar Proxy album, whatever you want to call it. It was really great. I have heard people feeling like this was an album a little too full of mediocrity. I do think it has mediocre moments, but overall I love the general direction and mindset behind this big budget soundtrack, paired with a movie that I really enjoyed. I think there is a certain level of artistic integrity shown on this soundtrack that is devoid of so many other big budget soundtracks for big budget action movies. I also really enjoyed the moments where we have up-and-comers, not so huge names at the very forefront of this track listing, where they have their own solo moments. I'm talking SOBRBE, Georgia Smith at the time, and plenty other more obscure artists getting their chance to shine with this soundtrack. Ooh, talk about a dark horse for being one of my favorite mixtapes, albums, whatever the fuck you want to call them, of the year. Lil Bo 2, Lil Yachty. By the way, happy birthday, Lil Yachty. This mixtape is fire. Now, like many of you, when I first heard this mixtape, I thought it was nothing special. But then I listened to the mixtape again months later, and then again after that, and then again after that, and again and again and again until this thing was like blowing my mind. I'm not gonna beat you over the head with the concept that I just like the mixtape. I like Yachty's style on this thing, but I do legitimately see technical improvements on the part of Yachty and his beat selection, flows, bars, beats, it all gets better here. It's also just a really good bounce back from Teenage Emotions, which was trash, and yeah, that's it. It's great. Listen to it again. Okay, so now we get to the Kanye West Made in Montana album series that I've talked about a lot already. Daytona is rock solid. Objectively, I could not imagine finding 5 better albums this year than this Pusha T project. And with Kids See Ghosts, if you've seen my review of it, you'd know I think it's very good. KTSE, while I really enjoyed it, even more so than Daytona when I first heard the project, my ultimate enjoyment of the project is a little up for debate for me right now, but was one of the premier artistic works of this year for me. Now, this Dirty Computer album by Janelle Monáe is a bona fide album of the year candidate, straight up and down, no question about it. Another album I've already reviewed. It is near pop perfection, R&B greatness, and I love that every single step of the way, Janelle Monáe is responsible for this album being fantastic. From the singing to the writing, to some of the production, to where this was recorded, to what label it was recorded under. Janelle Monáe owns all of it. And the movie, and her acting in the movie, and just everything about this project is beautiful. She's beautiful. I feel beautiful listening to it. Killing Our Demons, King Overdosed, Kids on Drugs, KOD by J. Cole. Arguably my favorite album in my favorite rapper's catalog. I think as usual, we have great beats, great raps, food for thought, some mature content. This album doesn't have the best execution in terms of its overarching concept. It's not perfect at every step of the way, but I do love this album, and if you don't, it's my list. Now, here's another dark horse of an album that I think is running for top 10-ish, don't really see it going for top 5, Saba's Care For Me. I did not review this album, but I love this album. It's kind of the reason I adore the Dirty Computer album so much and Janelle as an artist. In Care For Me, I do see Saba as this one-man act, a single guy who is capable of a lot of musical execution. The album deals a lot in concept of the idea of being lonely, and what better way to drive that concept home than to really put your own blood, sweat, and tears into the work. The storytelling is fantastic. It's very gripping at moments, and the overall monochromatic feel and tone to the entirety of the record. In and out of the recordings, it just executes a very solid narrative. Let's keep it rolling. Another dark horse, JPEG Mafia, Veteran. It's a fucking classic. Not really, but this album is great. It's funny, the production is intricate, the album is unique, it is experimental, it's an album that could only exist in the internet age, and I love it for that. Veteran was kind of an album I had to be put onto. I had to hear about it a little bit before I actually took my ear to it, and when I heard it, I thought it was okay. I thought there were great parts to it, And each listen, it gets better and better and better and better until it is in full rotation for the entirety of this year. I have listened to it quite a lot and have come to really endear several parts of it. Finally, the most recent album I've loved at the time of recording this video, Astroworld, Travis Scott. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. This thing fucking bangs. I'm sorry I didn't review this because I was out of the country, but if you really want me to review this, DM me, comment down below, do whatever, because that will certainly incline me more to want to take a video to this thing. I don't really understand why more people were not freaking out about this project. And this thing is doing numbers. I'm really happy to see Travis back in fucking sicko mode, doing what he does best. There are so many different little things to pay attention to and appreciate with all the features, guest verses, all the beat switches, and just the crazy little things that he wants to throw into the project. This might be my most listened to album already, so I just have to give it praises for that. This is the last album on my list of albums I love, and we talked about albums I hate, and then we talked about some albums that was alright, but not the great. But until then, follow me on Instagram at 40ounces.of.dev, because every Monday at 6 p.m. I'm hitting y'all with that New Music Monday. On my story, previews of new music that's coming out, albums, mixtapes, singles, shit on SoundCloud and Bandcamp, and just making sure that you and I are up to date on our new music coming out every week. So follow me there, follow me here, follow me everywhere, and that's gonna be it for me. I have been Dev Dumalino. You have been so wonderful for watching as always. And remember, art without favor is like a windmill without wind. Dev Dumalino, out.